Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, is here with me. Mary is the host of Opinion Journal each day at WSJ.com. And over these last weeks, convergence, quite independent, Mary's coverage of, with Robert George of the New York Post, the Moreland Commission. This is New York State politics. I like to think of it as Dashiell Hammett 21st century, because what we have here is no crime. We see nothing wrong. And yet there is a general sense that there is
intrigue.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Back scratching, influence peddling.
Murkiness.
The kind of graft that makes for thrillers. Mary, a very good evening.
Good evening, John.
You and Robert George had a happy conversation a couple of weeks ago, I believe, about this.
We did. Well, it's always happy when you talk about Big Apple politics, John.
And Mr. George shares our curiosity about
our sense of intrigue.
Yes, because the Moreland Commission, established to provide clarity, answers, was established by the very popular, powerful, now running for re-election, Governor of New York.
Andrew Cuomo.
Andrew Cuomo, the son of a very powerful, popular Governor, Mario Cuomo. And as Tom Kaplan of the New York Times told me, reporting on this for the Albany Bureau, Mr. Cuomo went into several places around the state. One was Long Island, another one was Buffalo. There might have been a third event. In elaborate press conferences with the whole entourage to announce the establishment of the Moreland Commission.
Very proud.
And then there's this, and it sticks in my mind because the Times was very precise about this. It took the governor this spring exactly 63 seconds to shut it down. 63 seconds. Therein lies the story, and we welcome to this studio in New York the candidate for Attorney General of the State of New York, John Cahill, running opposite Mr. Schneiderman, who is the present extant Attorney General of the State of New York, running for re-election. Mr. Cahill, a very good evening to you.
Great to be with you, John.
Thank you. You were in Syracuse earlier today, and you're now in New York City. You're traveling a very, very popular state. It's a state that is entirely in the hands of what used to be called Tammany Hall. Now we just refer to it as the Democratic Party. And representing the Democratic Party is Ed Hayes, my consigliere. Ed is our ceremonial Democrat. Good evening to you, Ed.
Well, I can't be too Democratic if I'm your lawyer.
However, it is true, Ed, that you come from the team that wins every election in New York.
I know how to go with a winner.
Yeah, all right, fine. Mr. Cahill, John, we mentioned the Moreland Commission because Mary and I have reported on it, but you've watched this, and the question here has to do with the Attorney General, Mr. Schneiderman, and the Moreland Commission. What relationship did they have when the governor set it up and when the governor closed it down in 63 seconds?
Well, certainly when the governor announced it, the Attorney General stood next to the governor with great fanfare how this was going to change the climate of corruption in Albany. And not only did they create the Moreland Commission, John, which is very important, but they also took the additional step of deputizing the lawyers who are on the commission as assistant attorney generals. So when the executive order establishing the Moreland Commission was created, it did much more. It actually empowered them with the ability to go after the legislature. That was the point of deputizing the members as assistant attorney generals. You fast forward 9 months later, $350,000 later, and it's unceremoniously disbanded, and the attorney general didn't have one word to say about how the governor, in essence, fired his assistant attorney generals. The attorney general is an independent officer, separately elected here in New York State. He had an absolutely critical role in the Moreland Commission, and he was absolutely silent when the governor basically fired his assistant attorney generals. I think really the people of the state need to know, what did the attorney general know about the ongoing political interference that was clearly happening in accordance with not only the New York Times, but the Daily News. What did he do about it? Why didn't he stand up and protect the independence of that office? People look to the Attorney General's office to be the chief law enforcement officer of the state. And when there is interference with an investigation, it was absolutely critical for the Attorney General to stand up and clearly tell the governor that at that point it was his investigation. Unfortunately, that's now what the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District is doing, standing up and trying to protect the integrity of his investigation. We did not have that from the Attorney General in this Moreland Commission, and it really was a wasted opportunity to really change the climate of Albany and to create confidence in our state government.
Well, let me introduce another character here, because we now have a federal prosecutor, Preet Bharara, who has the files of the commission. So, John, what do you expect him to do with these files? Do you think he's going to move forward and complete the commission's work?
I do. I think that the commission did start to seriously investigate some serious issues in Albany. And as I mentioned, they spent 9 months, and the Moreland Commission did have numerous members that were highly regarded, law enforcement officials around the state. And I do expect the Southern District to do what he says. And then it means he is following up on the work that was began but ended in state government. And unfortunately now we have an investigation of the investigation. That seems to only happen in New York politics. And I am confident that the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to follow this through.
The quote from the governor, Ed, I look to you on this. This is your governor. The quote from the governor at the establishment of the commission was, "Trust is everything to me. So I am appointing a new independent commission, the Moreland Commission, led by top law enforcement officials from all across this state to investigate and prosecute wrongdoing." I note, importantly, I'm told by Tom Kaplan, the important players here were the executive director, Regina Calcaterra, as well as the chief of investigations, Danya Perry, a veteran prosecutor. So, puzzle for the people listening in who do not live in New York, across the country, Steve. Ed, what does this mean that the governor would have such great hopes and appoint all these representatives, very distinguished representatives, for an 18-month commission, and 9 months later shut it down? What does that tell you?
It means that somebody went to his office and said, "You're not going to believe this, Andrew, but they're looking at so-and-so, who is a very good friend of ours." That's all it means.
So right away, the Moreland Commission was threatening somebody important.
And not just important, I think personally close to, and somebody, the ramifications of them getting in trouble would directly fall on the governor.
So, Eddie, they weren't necessarily investigating the executive branch. They just might have happened upon this connection.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Listen, in New York State, everybody's a Democrat, right? There's 3 Republicans. John is one of them, all right? And they're all connected to each other.
I'm the second one.
Yeah, the second one, right?
I'm the third.
And you're the third. Okay, I'm in the room with all 3. And a lot of the ties are, direct help to yourself. They're economic ties, they're political ties. So everybody's very hesitant about who gets investigated, and everybody depends on their place in that network to keep from being investigated. That's it. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, Schneiderman, you could blow somebody up in front of him, and they were a Democrat, and you go, geez, I didn't see anything happen.
Well, just picking up on that point.
This is John Cahill.
About the independence of the commission. And certainly the Attorney General argued that in papers that were submitted in the court about how it was truly independent from the governor once it was actually created. But when you look at how Albany works, and this is just frankly another pattern about it, how it's get along. Let me point to an example on this. A little over a year ago, a member of the New York State Assembly, Vito Lopez, was sexually harassing young women in his office. And instead of basically calling him out, the Speaker, Shelley Silver, came to an agreement with the Attorney General's office of using taxpayer money to try to silence these women who were being sexually harassed. So instead of challenging the status quo of the Speaker and the longtime Assemblyman, it's, let's see if we can buy our way out of this. And it's the same thing we've seen here in the Moreland Commission. Instead of the AG standing up for the independence of that office, the integrity of that office, that people to have confidence in, it was simply go along, get along. He never took the edict of the Moreland Commission seriously.
Mary Kissel of the Wall Street Journal editorial board and the host of Opinion Journal each day at WSJ.com, and I are speaking with the distinguished candidate for Attorney General from the state of New York, John Cahill, and our colleague Ed Hayes about the Moreland Commission. The name Moreland, it comes from a 1907 law that governors used to create panels to investigate wrongdoing, presumed wrongdoing. And when we come back, I'll ask Mr. Cahill how it is that Mr. Schneiderman, a Democrat, recommended 9 of the 25 members of this committee. What does he have to say about the fact that they were interrupted in their worthy duties? And what do we have of a record of Mr. Schneiderman's decision-making when the governor decided to shut it down in 63 seconds? I'm John Batchelor.